Hello. I guess I'll tell you guys a little bit about me because I don't think I know more than maybe a couple of you. Um, so I am mostly from Kentucky, but I say mostly because I was born in Cincinnati and we lived there until I was 12, and then moved to the middle of nowhere in Kentucky when I was a little kid. So most of my years were growing up in Kentucky, and that's where I started doing clay in high school when I was about 15. Um, so I'm younger than I look. I'm about to turn 37 in a week. So I've been doing it for a really long time. And I went to Eastern Kentucky University to get my bachelor's degree. And a couple of years after I was done with that, I went to University of Dallas to get my master's degree. And I got out of there in 2014, and that's when I moved out here. So I've been here for 7 years now. It's crazy to think. It doesn't feel like it's been that long that I've lived in Arizona, but moved out here with a boyfriend whose family was here. Now I'm not with that boyfriend anymore, but I'm still here because I like it here. And that's pretty much a very brief, brief bio, I guess. Mostly hand building, but I throw a lot of my forms, so I kind of do both. But I think it's probably more like 70% hand building. Um, I might see if I can switch this, if it'll let me see. Okay, it's weird when it's just my face on the screen, so I needed to at least see if you guys. So I feel really weird. Um, yeah, mostly hand building. I've through academia, I was mostly doing sculptural work and kind of functional stuff on the side. So when you're in college, you think everything needs to be sculpture, and then I kind of moved on from that when I realized that I kind of just want to make pots. Um, but I can't not make weird pots, so they still end up being very, very sculptural. So um, that's kind of all I really know to say about that. I'm sure I'll think of other things to tell you about me and you can ask questions. I'm not used to giving little like few-minute bios of myself, so it feels really awkward. Um,
You did great.
Yay, woo! Let's see. So most of the stuff that I do now, like the stuff that people I guess know me for the most is the really sculptural mugs that I make. Um, and they take me like hours to make one of them. It's including glazing, everything start to finish. It takes like almost around 8 hours per mug. Um, so I have a few things in sort of stages so I can kind of like pull one out of the oven and show you, like, okay, this looks like this far along. But I have a couple of what I call blanks here. So what I do is I throw them first. Um, and then I kind of alter them from there. So to start with, I have these under plastic, and I'm gonna move my camera in a minute because I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. And I have images that I can show you later of like people that do kind of similar stuff to me, but it's nothing like mine. So that like, I mean, I think a lot of times people see somebody do a technique and it's like, well, how else can I apply this? And it's kind of, when you're so visual, it's kind of hard to have like a tangible example of other stuff you can do with the same technique. So I pulled up some pictures of stuff that is relatable and stuff that kind of like help you get an idea of other stuff you can do with very similar way I do things. I have two and I only need one, so let me move this one. I've had these under plastic for like weeks and I've been spraying them like every couple of days because I've been in like the glazing and then selling phase and packing boxes, and now I'm back in wet clay phase. I'm like, please don't dry out. But everything I start with, usually if I'm doing a mug, and I do mugs more than anything, and I'm really lucky and glad that that's what people like the most because I genuinely like doing that the most. And other people are like, I hate mugs and everybody wants mugs. But I'm like, oh, thank God I like this. So I'll get a handle on, and everything starts out kind of this shape when I throw them. So they start out pretty basic, and then they get a little weird.
How many pounds of clay do you start out with when you throw?
Usually kind of about 1.25 pounds because I usually make them somewhat big, so I have like a bigger canvas to work on. And people like really big mugs anyway. Somebody has messaged me. It's been a while, but somebody was like, "Can you do like a really big mug, like a 30-ounce mug?" And I was like, "That's like gonna weigh like 12 pounds when you got it pulled, but that might be a bit much." But they usually once they're all done, they usually vary from about like 13 to 16 pounds, and sometimes are really bigger, not pounds, ounces. And some of the bigger ones will be like like maybe 16 ounces at the most. But I try to throw them pretty thin because I'm adding a lot of clay. I hardly ever carve anything. Everything is adding after the fact. So they all start out like this, and the benefit of making really organic work is it doesn't matter how gross and messy it is, because I'm just going to put more clay on top of it when it's done. So, oh, 1 second. Hey, can you grab something for me really quick? I have an assistant. Bethany's white water bottle downstairs. That's the only thing I forgot. I forgot my spray bottle. So he's gonna grab that for me really quick. Let's see. I'll show you guys some of my tools first, so you can like see what's going on here, and I'm gonna try to make
Lori,
this.
what clay body are you using?
I usually use B-Mix, Cone 5 B-Mix Laguna. I also have my own really old clay that I had mixed up when I was in grad school. But it's kind of just made to mimic B-Mix. But you know, one of the things we had to do was make our own clay body. So I never went through it, and now I have like hundreds of pounds of that still downstairs in the studio from like 7 years ago, and it's dry as a bone. But I'm gonna try to go work through that. So eventually, after this bag of B-Mix that I've got is done, I'll be working with like my own clay body. But it's meant to just be a white stoneware that feels very much like B-Mix. Yay!
And is that like B-Mix with grog or without grog?
Mine is not. I do it without grog because all my little fine detail work, it just kind of gets in the way. And when I'll show you later where I refine like messy details with a paintbrush. If I did it with grog in it, it would kind of just pull the grog out and just be really bumpy and not what I want. So I'm using it without grog. Some cool tools that I have. This is actually Bethany's, but she got it for the whole studio. These spray bottles she got on Amazon, and they're like hairdressers spray bottles. So when you spray them, they have like this continuing mist. It's like the more you spray, the longer it goes. Or you could still just get little spurts. I don't know if it's very easy to see in the camera.
Yeah.
But you spray it and it's just like, it's like really, really nice. And she get like a pack of 2 of them for like $13 or something. But they're like really satisfying. And I am like constantly spraying my work because not only do we live in the desert, I like to work really, really wet. So I'm always spraying. And I'm usually working on Hardy backer board, which you can get at like Home Depot or Ace Hardware maybe. It's a really good alternative to like working on like a plaster bat or something like that, because you don't have to mix anything up, because plaster is a real pain. And you don't have to like have canvas on the table that collects a lot of dust. But this stuff, you see part of it popped off here, but it absorbs water. It's like meant to go behind tile in bathrooms, so it's meant to not get gross when it gets wet. And absorb moisture. So it's really good to like put reclaim on and let dry out, or like anything you would do on like a plastic top table, like you can use this instead, and it's cheaper and you can just nail it to a table. We have a table down there that's like a workbench from Harbor Freight, and it's just like nailed to the top, and it comes in big sheets, so you can have it cut or you can just have like a big sheet of it. So I'm usually working on it. Constantly spraying because the AC is like blowing on me. I'll pull out the one that I have in progress, and then I'll go back to it when I start working on it. But I just want, if you've not like looked at any of my work, whatever, like I just want you to know like where I'm going. So let's see. And let me move my tripod so I can get in real close. So I've been working on this one under here. I used to keep a damp box with plaster in it, but I don't know. There's just something about it that I don't know. It's something I'd rather just keep it in plastic so I can move all my stuff around really easily and keep it wrapped up. And I can keep stuff under plastic really wrapped up really well, and it doesn't dry out on me, even though I live here for like days and days and days. So I never really have an issue with it, but obviously you can use a damp box too if you want. Something else that I really love using is these tiny little hair clips for hair, because I usually keep my stuff half wrapped up when I'm working on it. And this just like holds your plastic in place for you. And then if you're working around and you're trying to keep a handle from drying out, I can just like keep plastic around it and keep it on the handle, so that your handle doesn't dry out too fast from the rest of your stuff. It's like tiny little tips like this, like I live for those. So this is one that is like maybe 70% done. So everything is super naturey, woodlandy. I hope that it's not too bright. I'm right in front of the window, which is great light, but if it washes everything out, then it's like kind of defeats the purpose, right?
No, your light's good.
Wow.
I know my phone's creating a shadow on my piece. So this is the one that's in progress. Inside. So everything's just added on, and I kind of make these like layers of growth. And then I'll show you how I do the bottom. And then I'll come back to that and put some leaves on it. But I keep everything on little scrap sponges and whatnot, and I just keep everything wrapped up like constantly. I spray it constantly. Let me not. I'm gonna spray water on the plug socket over here that has my phone plugged in. That's not good. But yeah, in the meantime, I just wrap it up and I keep these little clips on it, and then I usually like double wrap it so that it stays extra moist. Maybe over here. I'm pretty used to working in really small spaces because I've always lived in tiny apartments and had small studio space. So I'm just kind of accustomed to keeping everything in like my own little like cubby. Something else that I use to keep all my tools in. For about 5 years, I worked as a makeup artist for MAC Cosmetics, right kind of at the end of grad school and then afterwards when I moved out here. So I have this old brush belt from MAC. And you can find these online for like $10. Don't buy one from MAC; they're like super overpriced. But you can find the exact same thing. And I like these better than like a pencil belt or not a belt, but like a pencil pouch, because there's all different sizes for all different kinds of tools and all kinds of cubbies for you to keep your junk in, and so as opposed to little tiny ones for pencils. So like you can hide all kinds of goods in here and stuff. Originally, I thought that I could wear this around my waist like we do with the brushes, but like that didn't work out. That was a dumb idea, and I was poking myself with tools. But like, you could keep this here and like just take it anywhere with you and fold it over if you want. And it's like, it's for makeup brushes, but it's like really good for keeping all your crap in one spot. Let's see. What else do I use? If I'm working inside, I usually keep a big bucket of water in because I don't want dust everywhere. So I'm like constantly like washing my hands off. Probably way more than most people would expect. So little things like that to keep everything clean. Because a lot of times I like to work upstairs instead of downstairs in the studio because I'm like the most introverted potter I know. So even if there's only a couple people downstairs there, I'm like, I just want to be alone. I'm gonna go upstairs and work. So let's see. Let me bring my thing back here. Then if you want me to like move in closer on anything, just let me know. I'm trying to like not be so zoomed in you can't see what I'm doing, but trying to find a balance.
Yeah, it's so far so good. It's a good angle.
What I use the most, and everybody that sees this is like, where did you get that? They're like really fascinated with it, and I think I take it for granted, but it's like all it was a scrap of wood from grad school that I used the like woodworking studio to shape. But you can buy these like throwing tools that people use to open pots up with when they're working on the wheel. But I use it just to beat shapes around and stuff with, and I use it like all the time with everything. It's like my favorite. But all it is just a piece of little wood that I shaped. You could probably whittle one if you got creative enough and patient enough, I guess, to whittle and sand one down. But that's how I make the bottom. the bottoms of these mugs that I shape. So it just starts out like this. And then I think about where I want my feet. So I want 3 feet. So I usually mark it with my thumbnail or fingernail that I want a foot here and here and here. And I kind of just beat around that. So I beat into the middle. And it makes a lovely sound. And I just like the little undulation on the bottom, and I like to have feet that like lift stuff off the ground. I think it gives it a lot of character. So I also like it when things look like they might crawl away from you. I kind of try to line it up so everything's straight. Sometimes it doesn't end up lined up with the handle, and whatever. If it's organic work, then I can kind of get away with things being a little off kilter, right? And it stays ugly for a while, but after a while it comes together. So, let me get where'd my sponge go? Oh, I knew I had another sponge. Matte sponge to do this.
How thick was your foot on your mug? How thick do you leave that foot when you throw it?
Not super thick. Pretty average. It's probably about the same as the rest of it. So it's probably about like, like a continuous. It's a tiny bit thicker, but it's not super thick.
Okay.
I don't let it get too deep in here though, because if I used to beat them really hard, and like you would get the little pits in the corner, and sometimes when glaze runs in there, like it would kind of cause problems like bubbling or something, where the glaze would pool and it would be really thick at the bottom into those little pockets. So I kind of stopped beating it so hard because I'm adding clay here anyway to make it exaggerate the look of that, which is what I'm going to do next. So I kind of get these to what I call my mug blanks. So they kind of all start with the same basic form, where I'll put the handle on and I'll cut the lip of it a certain shape, and then I'll add the feet and make those a certain way, and then I'll start to like build on top of that. But they all start out exactly the same way. Let me move my stuff around, my clay out. And I always just work right out of the bag. And then any little scraps that I get along the way, I throw back in the bag immediately because I hate reclaim. So I just keep things as wet as possible at all times so that I never have to reclaim anything. And then if I do have some reclaim, I usually just throw it in Bethany's bucket and let her have it because I don't feel like dealing with it. See, it's so washed out. I wonder if I can fix it. I don't know, maybe not. If I pull my curtain over a little bit, it might help. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. We'll get by. I'll zoom in here and there so you can see what's going on. But when I make the feet, I just make 3 little balls. Yeah, just pull it like a quarter of the way over. Yeah, that's fine. You guys can see good, right?
Yeah, it's good. We've got a good view.
That's gonna blow on me with the bird's eye. So basically, I just make like 3 little shapes like this, like little domes. And then I'm gonna slip and score and attach them. And then I'm gonna just use my fingers to kind of like make this undulation. Maybe I should have made these beforehand, because now you just have to wait for me to make balls of clay. It makes me feel like I'm making you guys wait for like ever to get to anything exciting. Let me know if you can't hear me right or something, because I have headphones on and I guess so far it's fine, but if it ever gets weird, just let me know.
No, your
It'd be
sound's
fun to just
good.
be able to see you making
Good.
those. Can't see them.
I'm trying not to yell because I keep forgetting that I have a mic right by my face and I'm like trying to project to the phone, but like you're right here, you don't need me to yell.
Or maybe you have your hands behind your mug, so we can't see
yeah.
what you're doing with your
Oh
hands.
yeah, I'm just shaping these little dome shapes that are flat on the bottom, and then I just, to make the bottom flat, you know, I just kind of push them into the. I see part of somebody's question, but I didn't see the whole question.
Yeah, it's asked. We're asking how many mugs might you have in progress at one time.
Well, typically I would do a few blanks like this and wrap them up and have maybe 5 or 10 of those. But then when it comes to working on like the elaborate part, I would kind of just do one at a time. And I make other kind of mugs that aren't quite so involved too, like little pinch pot mugs. And I was going to touch on that in a little while too. But like I'm kind of changing things now how I work, because it's just when you're doing one mug after another, that's like hours of labor. Like it just really burns me out and it stresses me out. So I finally was like, I'm just gonna break things up. So the way I'm breaking things up now and seeing how it goes for me is having one that I'm always working on, maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, but then wrapping it back up and then working on other stuff that's a little bit relatively quicker for me to produce during the rest of the day, so that I'm not just like, I feel like I'm doing such a grind, you know. I'm just slipping and scoring these to stick them on there. So that's exciting. I do love
And if you
this little guy.
if you ever follow Lori's shop, you'll see that when she does have a sale, I think your stuff sells out almost like as it pops up on your website.
Pretty much. Fingers crossed, because who knows how long that will last. I'm always like, this is the last time. No, everybody that has bought one, and nobody else wants one. And I'm done. I don't know, which is like just, artist anxiety, But yeah, so Instagram has really changed things for artists for good and bad, I think. But when you tell people that, I'm gonna update my shop at this certain time, and that's when things are going up, I feel like psychologically it like makes people feel like, oh, I need to be there to get those things at that time. And it doesn't mean everybody that does that sells out right away, but like it does kind of create this sort of like sense of urgency, I think, and it just makes things easier for people to know when there will be things listed. So even if you're not like selling out right away, like it just lets people know when your restocks are, and you're not just like constantly uploading 2 or 3 things a day, because that gets to be really grueling too. So let's see. I feel like I'm in focus and my pot is not. There we go. I'm still in the boring part. So all I'm doing here is slipping and scoring the tops of these. Now, if I'm doing like pinch pot mugs and stuff, I might have more things going at once a little bit. I kind of like will make, the so-called blanks for those, like maybe about 5 of those, and then kind of work on those one after another. They don't take quite as long. They still take 2 or 3 hours a piece, but I'll usually like make all the bottoms for them and then make all the tops for them, kind of assembly line it a little bit. It's doing things one at a time, one after another from start to finish. It's kind of like you finish it and then you're like, oh God, now I have to do another one and start all over again. It's kind of like this weird psychological trick it does to me, where it just makes things seem so much harder than they are.
Lori, I've noticed that at least the pieces I've seen on your site all have like that woodland theme. Is that when did you transition into that kind of woodland themed, and is there inspiration in particular behind that?
Woodlandy stuff has kind of always been, since like late undergrad, has kind of always been what inspires me the most. But for a long time, I would make stuff and because I think people aren't used to seeing things like little things that reference stuff like weird fungus and like lichen and stuff like that. so people would just be like, oh my God, it's coral, it's sea life. And like, since it wasn't that for me so much, I would like get really frustrated with kind of and be like, no, it isn't. And like, there's this long running joke with my friends that have, you know, known me since way back when. That's like, it's not the sea. And they'll jokingly be like, oh my God, that's great coral. And I'd be like, shut up. So I kind of started pushing it a little harder just to be like, no, this is what it is. So it made me kind of start getting like more literal with things, like putting actual like mushroom looking things on my work, which I'm kind of trying to step back from now that I've done that for a while and not do as many straight up mushrooms and stuff, because I don't like to be super literal with everything. I like to kind of make up my own nature, as it were. You know, make things kind of like, oh, that kind of looks like this, but I'm really not really sure what the hell I'm looking at. I'd rather do it that way. So I'm kind of, you know, I'm always struggling between the two things. But yeah, woodlandy stuff, like I'm not anti-sea. I love sea life. It's just when it comes to my own art, like it just doesn't really excite me, I guess. But people thought I was making coral mugs for a long time. And then I put tiny little, when I was kind of figuring out the whole mushroom thing, I put tiny little mushrooms on things, and then somebody was like, oh, little jellyfish, and I was like, oh no. The struggle. So yeah, now I have like moss and things like that, but I try to keep other things a little less literal. Like I always refer to things as my floofy bits and my bloops, less technical terms for things. Let's see. So I got all those stuck on there. I don't use slip on anything because I just don't feel like constantly having a bucket of slip that I got to worry about. So I just make slip on the pieces as I score them, so they're all squishy. So I just score them so much with this little guy that I'm just building up slip as I go because it's wet. And when I dipped this, and you can just get these at Marjans or whatever, they're just like your super generic pokey sticks that have like all the little, trying to get it to focus, but you know, they have all the little like tiny needles at the end. But when I dip it, it kind of like holds a drop of water on it. So when I go right in on my clay, it kind of just puts, that like water there on your piece for you. So you can just kind of add water as you go. And as you score it, it just gets really like muddy and slippy without you having to constantly mix up stuff and add it to it. And I don't worry about like putting vinegar in anything. I haven't done anything like that since undergrad, and I have yet to have any issues. That being said, every clay body is so different. So don't come at me if you stop using vinegar in your work and something starts cracking. don't blame me. I tried to make some slab mugs out of some B3 brown clay last year. And I usually never have much problems with cracking, but these mugs that I made out of the B3 brown, even though I kept them wrapped up overnight and I came and checked on them the next day, they had these vertical cracks. It looked like somebody came in and like smashed my work when it was leather hard and left it. It was so bad. I was like, what the crap?
So, I think B3 brown is just, it's a fun clay to work with, but it's kind of crabby.
It is very short and temperamental, I think, a little bit. It really wants to be more sculptural, which is fine because that's how I roll anyway. But when it comes to like, you know, slab building, I guess it doesn't want to be slab built, I guess.
And it doesn't want to be fired too hot.
It doesn't want to be fired at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't really like being glazed, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, eats all your glaze. But it's a fun clay to work with. So
yeah, it's gorgeous clay. I have recently purchased some black porcelain, which is basically a porcelain clay body where a black inclusion stain has been added to it, so it fires black, but it doesn't change your glazes unless they're translucent, you know, and the black shows through. But as far as glazing goes, it doesn't get weird. But it was not cheap clay, that's for sure. But it's really, really nice. I haven't played with it more than on a couple mugs so far because it's still porcelain and it's still a pain to work with porcelain. But they do have a stoneware version. I'm like, I might try that, or I might just get the inclusion stain and mix it in myself to the B mix, and then I'll be good to go because I've been using B mix for like years. So I feel like this is my OG clay right here. Me and B mix go way back. I'm just smoothing these out. all the way around and shaping. And sometimes I'll go in and like cut off some height, and just shape it however I want it. So this is like the majority of what I do on my work is just shaping and smoothing and pushing wood tools into clay, and I'm trying to rush through it a little bit. So otherwise we'd just be watching me do this for like an hour. But as you get going and you start shaping things out, you get this little foot that's like, hello, do. Oh, and then you drop it. Oh.
There goes your handle.
Yeah, I constantly spray my handles too, because you don't want things getting, it's so easy for that to dry out and then things start cracking and it's like no bueno. So
do you, Lori, that black porcelain that you mentioned, is it like by a particular brand or?
The brand, I can't remember the website I bought it off of, but if you just Google black porcelain, it kind of comes up. The clay company is a European company, so it's imported. That makes it even more expensive. But the brand is like SiO2, which is just, like the molecular structure for silica, I think. So SiO2, I think, is the actual name of the brand. And since it comes from Europe, it's measured in 5-kilogram bags, I think. So it's like 11-pound bag of clay or something weird, that we're not used to. But I think the stoneware is measured closer to what you would find over here, as far as like being closer to 25 pounds per bag, and it was a little cheaper. But you could also just Google black inclusion stain and just mix it in. There's other colors too, like they have like blue and green and yellow. You can get weird, and it doesn't seem to have any effect on glazes. I've tried to test with a bunch of different glazes and it looks so cool.
Yeah, it's called SiO2, at least the one I found. SiO2 black porcelain black ice is what they call in their clay.
It's wonderful and a pain at the same time because it's expensive, and working with porcelain when you're a hand builder is not very easy. But if you just want to, throwing with it's hard too. It's like throwing cream cheese. So when I meant to throw a shape like this with it, I ended up with a little teacup and it was like all thick, and I was like, oh my god, you trying to make it any taller, and it's like, no, I don't want to. But yeah, it's a really good way if you want a really dark black clay body, but you don't want your glazes to bubble, All right, let's see. Oh, I forgot to smooth this one out. Feel free to ask me questions when I'm doing like just boring clay smoothing.
Are you, do you have any of your pieces on hand? Or will you be able to show us one of your finished products again?
I can go grab one. I usually only hang on to the ones that like are super like seconds. Or I have a couple here, one that I actually sent to Liam before he moved here, and he moved here, so it's still here. I do things a little differently than what I did then. I'll go grab it though, because generally it's still pretty much the same. I have two here.
And for those of
headphones on, you can hear me when I go all the way to the kitchen.
Yeah. Those of you that like the black porcelain clay too, it looks like it's also available in the ceramic shop.
Yeah, that might be where. I don't think I bought it from them. I found it somewhere cheaper. But if I remember, I'll send you a link to it or something. Because I'm sure I still have the receipt for it. This is one that I made maybe like 2.5 or so years ago.
Very nice.
Bottom.
Beautiful.
But, so I'm still figuring some things out with this one, like glazing. I mean, I'm constantly figuring things out. We're like never done with that, right?
Seems like you've really moved away from the shiny glaze.
A little bit more and more. Like I definitely only want certain parts to be shiny for sure. I don't make the woody type of parts as shiny as I used to anymore. I kind of stick to just doing like a red iron oxide on it. And I definitely make these look different now too. Like you can kind of see, you can tell I never picked this one up. It had a spider web on it. Um, and I used to do my feet more flat, you know, like, but I'm always thinking about things looking good all the way around. So I didn't want to just have a flat, completely flat bottom on them. But this is definitely an earlier one where it was still kind of like, I would do the hammering part and that was about it, you know. But I was doing little mushrooms on them and stuff like that.
Do you say
And
your
I
B
still-
mix is cone 5?
Yeah, we generally fire cone 5. Sometimes we'll go to 6 just because, you know, the glazes do a little bit different in the 6 than the 5. And sometimes I like the results better at a 6 and sometimes I like them better at a 5, but I'm pretty lenient on that. I'm like, whatever you guys want to do, it's fine. Let's see, do I have this kind of smoothed out all the way? Pretty much. The only thing about this is then I have to make sure that things aren't gonna like tip really easily one way. So it's like that way it tips really easily. So I kind of like have to fuss with it until it feels stable on all 3 sides. So I kind of beat it down a little bit. That's better. Since I always add so much clay to the handle of these, it kind of adds a little more weight back here. So I used to have this open side, kind of like where the handle is, but then it made everything really tip that way. So I kind of started putting a foot here so it can kind of like kickstand itself a little bit.
Yeah, are you going to talk about your glazing or more in detail on your glazes? But we do have a lot of questions about, like, do you use underglaze? What type of glazes, brands, and stuff to use?
Everything. I want to get back to mixing my own, but I do have some that I mix myself, but it's so easy to just go buy, you know, like you get really like spoiled on just going to Marjan's and picking out whatever glaze you want. So most of mine for a while have just been commercial. Every brand. I love a lot of Potter's Choice. I have a lot of Laguna. I feel like Laguna glazes are really underrated. Like I never see people online put Laguna on blast for having really cool glazes. But I use a lot of those. Oh yeah, this is one I mixed up. I didn't formulate it, but it's one I mixed up, but I haven't mixed it up in a while.
It's gorgeous.
But for the most part, thanks. I tried to mix this back up recently and I did something wrong and it looks totally different. It's still a functional usable glaze, but it's not what it was supposed to be. So yeah, everything is hand painted on. Like all the glazes are just meticulously hand painted, section to section. So like what I do with a little brush is I will literally just go over each part that I need to do super meticulously. But when I'm trying to keep these edges really clean from one to the next, I'll usually work top down so that when I'm getting in here, if some gets on this rim, I'll go back with a needle tool and I'll literally just like very carefully scrape it off, you know, all the way around, which is like super painstaking, but the results I get, it makes things really clean. So I'm trying to see.
I love that big handled needle tool. I love that white handle on that.
Yeah, this is brand I got. It's like Buffalo something. It's really kind of expensive, but this was like the cheapest tool they had, and they have carving tools, and I never carve. So this is the only tool theirs I would have used anyway. It used to be bright yellow, but it's been a couple years. But they make really nice tools, so you definitely get what you pay for. Really good quality tools.
What brand did you say that was?
I feel like it was Buffalo, something Buffalo. Do you remember the brand?
Bison.
Almost the same. Yeah, they have like, you know, the handles are wood and they're really good shapes and really good tools. So it's a good investment if you're a carver and you want some really great tools. But yeah, this guy was the cheapest thing that they had, and it was $20 for this guy. But it's one of my favorite tools. It's definitely worth it. Real quick, I also, speaking of favorite tools, and somebody local, is my Dolan knife. Dolan's local. I use this guy for everything too. This little, what are they called? Felting knife, whatever. Fettling knife. I use this guy for everything, and I carve down all of my lips to have this shape that kind of dips down just a little bit. So everything's kind of like, it's got a little bit of like a graceful swoop to it. Let me see. So I usually just eyeball that and come in on both sides and kind of go down and up. And then I just kind of look at it from this angle to see if it's off or if one side's, you know, like see it's a little higher up here. So I'm just kind of like get real tedious about making sure it's even and all that stuff people don't realize takes like so much time. But when you're fussing with the mug lip for like 20 minutes, it's like, oh my God. What I could do if I didn't need to work so wet is just use this little guy, this little shaver from, is it Mud Tools? So like just go in on both sides and it would make that shape for me. But I need things to be a little bit more wet than what I could use that for, you know. So I kind of do it the hard way. I do everything the hard way. My whole life. And then I kind of fix that edge so everything's not square. So I'm just gonna like go in really tediously on all of this. And then I'll wet my fingers and kind of like go all the way around it to get a really nice lip back on. So as far as like the main form, like that's how I do the main body of that is I'll go in and get a nice undulated rim, and then I'll get my bottom worked out like this. Make sure it's steady. And then once I'm done with that, I'll usually wrap it up, and I'll just do that to maybe 5 or so mugs so that when I'm ready to start a new one, I just have one ready to go. I can just pull out of the bag and like start doing all the little tedious stuff on. So let me wrap this back up.
Lori?
Yeah.
Have you noticed how the bottom of your mugs look like the eggs in the movie Alien?
You know what? I only seen Alien when I was like way too young to be watching something like that, so I don't remember the eggs. But that's so funny. I love that because I love.
Yeah.
Like when
if you Google it up, they look exactly like it. Oddly enough.
That's awesome. I'm surprised that my boyfriend's not mentioned that because he loves Alien. Usually, like when I'm thinking of work, I'm usually thinking of like maybe some kind of woodland life that maybe you would find on another planet, not necessarily ours. So that makes me happy. Oh, somebody said that the bottoms of my mugs look like the alien eggs in the Alien movie. All right. All the super boring stuff out of the way, and let's unpack the one that's mostly done. And then I just got to figure out how to position this so you can see what I'm doing. Maybe I'll sit. This is the only downfall to doing these things on Zoom when you're doing small detailed work. It's like, how do I show you what's going on? What I might do is move the camera in front of me and flip it. Let me spray this a million times so it doesn't dry out. Okay, let's see. I'll try it right where it is at first. And I probably will make my own screen big so that I can see what you see. Yeah, I might. So I'm gonna put some leaves on this. I kind of work everything top to bottom generally. So I would have marked where I want things with like a little tool, sort of draw on the pot so I know exactly where things are gonna go, and then I'll work from the top down to get shapes that I want, and all these like sort of layers that you see, like even on the inside of the lip, like I've sort of made it almost look like a separate part there. Is me just making tiny coils. Go ahead.
Do you ever use a banding wheel when you're doing your work? I notice you do a lot on your phone.
Usually.
There, so.
I didn't think to bring it up, but yeah, bring it upstairs. But usually, yeah, yeah, I did. It's sitting over here. It has something on top of it, but yeah, I usually do work on a banding wheel.
Okay.
Just a cheapy one. Liam has one of those really nice Shimpo ones, but sometimes I steal his. But usually, what I'm doing is I'm just taking a tiny coil and I'll press it all the way around exactly where I want it to go. And then I'm taking my finger and I'm just pressing that into the clay halfway down. So that kind of makes this layer. It like gives the illusion that I've added this whole thing of clay here when I've really just added clay here. So it's like an easy way to get sort of layers and separations without adding tons of clay to the surface or getting like overly complicated. And I do that with everything, like the little, what I like to refer to as my fifi bits. Here is just like little balls of clay that's shaped into little teardrop shapes and kind of like pulled down. So it's literally just all little hand sculpted things over and over again. All of the little mushroom shapes are just little coils that I've smoothed down and then took in a wood tool to make the gills with. I seen part of.
Did you? Yeah, they asked about, did you add a whole slab of clay to the top because or did you just put something on the inside?
No, all it is a little coil that's smoothed down to make it look like that's a whole separate, like, compartment, but it's not. It literally is just like a little coil that I run all the way around. And then I take my finger and I just go like all the way around. And then
what do you use to make your texture? Are you going to talk about that?
The rough texture? Yeah, I am super fan of as basic a tools as you can get. So most of the things that I use are like literally just like little wood sticks. So I use this guy. This is a wood stick that I focus that I've kind of like shaped with sandpaper. I feel like everything's blurry. Yeah, just like wood sticks that I've shaped with sandpaper myself, and like I just literally go in and pokey very tediously. So all of that texture on the top is literally just been poked with a stick to make it. Please focus, please. Yeah, that's all I've done is just poke. And so like when I do it, I have to think about what I need to do first before I put a layer somewhere. Because putting this layer on first and then going back and poking, like you would have to work it all the way around this, and that would just be a pain. So when I sketch things out, I'll kind of draw on the piece where I'm going to go, and I'll think usually top down. So I would have done this texture all the way around exactly where I needed, and then put this on, and then put all of this stuff added to the handle that's already pulled and attached. And then, yeah, I just have to like really step back and think about what needs to happen in what order, which is kind of tedious, but once you do it for so long, you kind of just know. But yeah, all of it is just little coils added and stuffed where I want them and smeared down. Super, super simple. Making it look super complicated. It's just like simple stuff.
Yeah, it does look like you've just added layer after layer of.
Mm-hmm. And it is a little bit heavy, but it's not. Yeah, it's not like these huge flat pieces I've added or anything like that. It's literally just a little coil.
So the shape on your, the shapes on your handles, did you say those are just little like balls and then you just kind of stretch them out?
It's just added. Let me get this other mug back out and I can just kind of like use it as a canvas to show you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Things. Yeah, and then I'll go in and show you how I put leaves on. I'll do a leaf. I want to keep you upside down. I so obsessively keep things wrapped up and sprayed. Let's see, where did the mug go I was fussing with? I don't really have anything sketched out for this, but I'll just add to it, and I can always take the clay back off later when I'm doing something for real on it. Let's see. That, and then I'm gonna do this, and then move it down. Okay. So like sometimes I'll do something like this where I'm working from the bottom up. So I'll think about the textures I want on the feet, and then there will be layers of stuff from there instead of the other way around. So I might add texture to this, which for the sake of time, I'm not gonna do, but I'm gonna put a coil around it and smooth it in. And I just take it from a ball of clay and pinching it off. And I just do it by hand. I just roll out a little small coil. Depending on what I want that fake layer to look like. It might be a thick coil or it might be a really tiny coil. It just depends. But I've just rolled out. And then I'm just gonna like, let's see. So I might have a shape that kind of follows the foot a little bit. And I'll do that all the way around first. Like I'll get that coil all the way around. All the way around. And then usually when I come to the other side, it'll just meet up and I'll kind of smooth it in.
And you're not having to score that as you add it?
I usually don't. I never ever score for the layers because everything's pretty wet. Like it's softer than leather hard for sure. It's not like sticky and it's not super wet, but it's definitely has some squish to it still. To a point where it's not gonna crack when I move it. But I'll smooth this connection out so you can't tell it's ever there. I'm not doing a very good job of that right now because of me trying to make sure you can see what I'm doing. And I'll kind of roll it up a little bit so you can hide it. And then I'll just go in and literally just smooth it out. And sometimes I'll leave like, you know, a line that's not just flat and blank, you know, all the way around. I kind of have some organic feel to it, especially if I'm going to go in and make it sort of like a wood texture so that it's not super uniform. But if you want to make something super uniform, you know, if you wanted to make something that was more like structural or what's the word I'm looking for, you know, like a man-made type of thing, you could do the same thing. You just need to use your tools sort of carve out how you wanted it, I guess. But I just do this all the way around. And I feel like it's so hard to see blurry, and I'm trying so hard to make it not blurry, but yeah, come on.
Thanks, Steve.
Is it just blurry to me or is it actually blurry?
It is a little bit blurry, but when you had it at the angle where you're at there, it's like that's really good view.
Yeah, you can kind of see where I literally just smooth that down, and because the clay is wet, like it never pops off or anything like that.
When you smooth stuff down, does that start to also kind of naturally retexture your mug just a little bit too?
It can. You know, I might have a texture under here that stays how it is. But usually with you know, whatever texture I'm doing, I mean, it never causes any problems. I don't think.
Right.
I
So you
usually
don't have a
don't
lot
just
of
leave it.
flexing.
Do you mean like of the body itself moving a whole lot?
Yeah, as you press down, you're just not pressing hard enough to make it
A little
flex.
bit, yeah. I think I'm just not pressing hard enough to make it change too much, you know.
Okay.
Sometimes I might on purpose, like if I like a big belly mug, so I might come on the inside and like push it out more, or use my stick to kind of like tap tap tap. I might go in and do that after I've got everything on it if I feel like I've kind of flattened it out too much and it's too straight up and down. Like I'll go in and re-belly out the form. But that's how I do every little layer you see. It's just a coil that smooths down like that. Which I'm gonna peel off of here because I got to do all things on the bottom first. I don't even know how I'm gonna make this mug yet. So the benefit to organic work is it looks like crap right now, and that's okay because it won't later. It'll be fine.
No, that was fascinating to see just how that tiny little skinny coil turns into looking like a whole entire layer added to your mug.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of started doing that in undergrad, and I was
that's like your little like the little shelf lichen looking stuff. Is that the same idea? You just have multiple little tiny coils that you add on there and smooth out and add a little texture. And
are you talking about like these guys, or like the little mushroomy shapes, or
yeah, like on your top of your handle there? Yeah, that one. Those.
Oh yeah, these guys. Yeah, it's just one little coil, and I start at the top, and I just push it in, and then I have this little wooden tool. This little guy. Nothing wants to focus for me today. Because I just need to step back a little bit and hope that it's okay. Yeah, I literally just go in with this and boop, 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 all the little lines for the gills of the little mushrooms.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. And then I do the same thing for the leaves that I put on my work. So it looks like maybe I've sculpted out this whole leaf and stuck it on there, but it's literally just been coil made. And I think I am going to try to move this camera really quick so that you can see so much better what I'm doing. Instead of a tripod, I have been using a mic stand that Liam has that lets me have way more leeway in getting things like in between me and the work. So I'll try not to make you guys dizzy, but give me just a second. And then maybe I can flip, hello, and use the other camera. How do I flip my camera? Ha ha. Excellent. I almost got it. These are the perils of the Zoom age, right? It's like good and bad at the same time. All right. Yay, this will probably look so much better. Forward. So that's the only thing I have left on this is I like to have leaves kind of wrapping around the bottom of this and coming down, and then I'm going to have some leaves growing up this way. Let's see which one. Spray, 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 spray. So before I put any leaves on it, I'll usually sketch them out first because the ones that are in the background, I have to do those first and figure out which ones go where. You know, if I just start winging it and going in, then it doesn't necessarily look as nice because it's not like kind of planned out so much. And as I go, I constantly put in more water on the handle so that it does not get dry. But I know that I want a leaf wrapped around this, so I kind of will go sort of draw where I want it all the way around. It'll be a funny skinny leaf. Okay. I might have another one down here, maybe that kind of comes around this way. And that way I know that I need to stop right there. And I'm gonna have another layer up here that kind of like grows up. Kind of like how I did on this one, but hopefully nicer than how I made it on this mug that's like 3 years old.
Do you have sketches of like for each mug? Do you kind of sketch out a plan?
I do. I didn't. I think the one I sketched out for this one, I'm not sure where it's gone because I actually started this one like weeks ago. But let me grab my little bullet journal here and I can show you how I sketch things out. I have my planner here that I do everything in. Like I literally make my own planner for like every single day. And just kind of get creative with it. It's like my mornings in. But here are some that I've done recently from the last batch. So I'll sketch them out with a pencil first, and then I'll go in with pen and then erase the pencil.
Wow.
And then when I'm done with them, I'll put a little check mark by it. So all of these I've done. So that way when I go in and sketch onto the mug where things go, like I just kind of know exactly what I'm doing without winging it. All right.
Did you look at any kind of natural plants or things like that for your ideas, or is most of this just imagination?
Sometimes, like I used to a lot more, and I've kind of just let myself let that kind of mix into my brain a little bit and kind of let something else come out of it instead of trying to mimic anything. But I do have like this whole folder on Pinterest of like really weird plants, you know. Like I like a lot of carnivorous plants and just like stuff like that. Kind of, I prop things up a lot underneath my phone. Like I'll just shove this under my phone to get things where I need them. But I think what I need to do is lower this.
Do you use any underglazes at all on your pieces, Lori?
I do use a lot of underglaze, especially on the moss. So like all this moss. All of that moss is more extreme than what I do now as far as using more than one color. But yeah, all of that's underglaze.
Do you have a particular brand of underglaze you like the best? Or?
Always Amico. Amico is my favorite. I've tried some Mako, like I do white back. So, you know, like this is just white back, black underglaze, and this is white back, black underglaze. So it's a lot cheaper, but there's, you know, like as far as the black goes, Amico versus Mako, the Mako's has a little bit of a sheen to it, and I don't want that. I want it to be completely matte. So Amico's is like completely matte. So I kind of was like, I don't want to go with something cheaper if I'm paying a little bit more money but getting exactly what I want, you know. But you know, for some things, Mako's still fine. You know, I know all about being broken on a budget, so it is a good option. But if you want something super specific, like no shine at all to your black, then you're gonna want to go with the Amico for sure. Okay, let's see. Where is the best way to do this? I'm probably gonna end up smushing some texture over here, but I can fix it. What you ought to be able to see. So, like I said, I'm just rolling a coil out here in the palm of my hand. And I usually do one for one side and one for the other. And then I kind of shape it. These I kind of flatten a little bit and I kind of like work the edge because I want my leaf to be like kind of crinkly and not super straight edged. So I kind of let it get a little weird. And then I can measure with the line I made how far down it will go. So there's going to be another leaf down here, so I can stop this one right there. Then I set that down, and then I do the other side. And then this one I know is going to kind of like come up and go around. So I kind of like lay it down first, and then I know that this has to curve. And I just keep it real wet too. As soon as I start to see cracks, it's too dry. Like right there, I can see some cracking. So I just moisten my finger and keep it. But I kind of keep spraying this a little bit too. And then I never have to worry about like slipping and scoring anything. Everything stays for me. Knock on wood, right? And I connect the tips. And I put this side on backwards, probably did. Okay. And I kind of lay it where I want it. And I like to use my finger to kind of lift up those edges because I'm gonna move those around once I attach this. It's curving around the handle there. But I want that to lift off to not be so smushed in. So a little bit of cracking, that's okay, I can fix it. My special fixer is a paintbrush. It fixes everything. I'll show you guys that in a minute. And then I just smooth it. I kind of stop there because I know I'm going to have a leaf coming this way. And then my other favorite tools is I have a whole pack of these tools that have wooden balls on the end. They were called doll eye socket makers. They're actually a Kemper tool. I got them at like a craft store. I didn't get them at Marjan's or anything. I've had them for years and years. But I looked the other day and you can go to kemperdolls.com and they sell these on there like a pack for like $3 or $4. The biggest ones are like really big ones, and then this little guy. They have balls on both ends, but a couple of them, one of the balls broke. So I just filed that down to like a really smooth rounded edge, and that's like I poke with that. So like I use this thing like on almost every single piece I make. I have used this tool on, and it's like the simplest thing. So when I want to get good flower shape going, not flower, but leaf. I usually put flowers on things. I just kind of go from biggest to smallest with these round tools and kind of get some shapes going. Kind of the best way to show you. And it's kind of the same way I got this sort of like, I mean, for me it's wood, but you know, it's almost like if you've seen wood that like termites have kind of made undulations through, it's kind of like in between that and like maybe driftwood or something. But it's just little balls of clay that or little balls of wood that I've just pushed into the clay over and over again. And then my other favorite tools, these come in all different sizes. They're just the silicone brushes. I know that I've had these for a long time since I was in Texas, but you can get them at the like Michael's in the polymer clay section. They have a bunch of these in different sizes. If you want bigger ones, because they come in like, you can get like real fat ones. You can get them at the Arizona Art Supply. Like I like to go to the one on Indian School because I live like less than a mile from there. And you can get all different sizes there too. They're a little bit kind of expensive, but they're really, really, really handy. And I use them a lot to kind of get the veins through these. And I wet it first, like I dip it in water first so that it slides down. And then I'll kind of like, and then I'm constantly wiping clay off every time because it gets clay built up on it. So I'll take a sponge and I'll just kind of like wipe the excess off. Like almost every time. I'm just trying to get like some depth. I was trying to do this for a demo, always makes it like feel really rushed and like look a little, I can do this better when I'm just on my own, I swear.
You have plenty
It
of
is-
time, so.
It is what it is, right? You guys do it. So I kind of just keep doing that, and then I'll just go in finer and finer to get little leafy,
Mhm.
sort of veiny textures. And it's okay that it's a little messy because when it gets to more of like, sometimes I'll even wait till it's totally dry. I will go in with different sizes of brushes that are damp, and I'll just kind of brush through it, and it's just all those little craggy goobers you get. It just takes all of that, knocks that all right off, and it just looks really refined.
It's amazing the sense of texture and depth you get. That mug looks like it has to be about a foot thick.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's totally not. I'm not gonna lie, it's not super light, but it's not like crazy heavy by any means. Like it feels pretty normal. Like there's a little weight at the bottom because of the feet I've added. But yeah, it looks like I've added tons of clay, and I really haven't. The most clay is probably the moss, which I'll run through how I do that really quick with you guys in just a moment. But that's probably the most thickest part of it, and maybe that right there. But yeah, it really like lets you fake it, right? And then I usually wait till it's drier to like knock all those goobers off. But this little paintbrush has been with me for like eight or 9 years. It's all worn down, but like that just means it's like super customized, right?
Mhm.
Let me see if I can do this. Yeah. Sometimes I do it when it's still wet. If you do this when it's leather hard or even, bone dry, since there's a little resistance, you won't change your texture too much. It'll just kind of smooth out all the little craggy bits, all the little boogers. And then to get like more things a little bit more interesting on the edges and a little bit more super leafy, like where is, I just have a brush like this, just cheap brushes, just craft brushes from the craft store. You can tell how old they get because all the paint's worn off. But then I like to sand these edges down and use the ends to poke into things with, so it's like double duty.
There's was a question about what your pricing is when you sell, and do you
It's
base it
been
on
ever changing. We can go ahead and finish your question.
I was gonna say, and do you base it on, like you mentioned, you do pinch pot mugs versus like these, do you base it on like how much time you've put into it?
That's probably the biggest consideration. And I mean, if you go through and think about how many hours you put into something and try to price just on that alone, like you're gonna drive yourself insane, you know? But I do kind of keep a little bit of a ballpark in my mind for that. But for the most part, I've been raising them steadily over time. So when I first started making them, like even this, I had been making this sort of style for maybe at least a year or two before then. But when I first started making these, they were like, which is funny how expensive it sounded to me at the time, but they were only like $85. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm not getting out of bed for $85. When I'm putting like 8 or 9 hours of work into a mug. So I've slowly raised them over time, which is always hard for artists to like think about how much they really need to get paid for their time, you know. But that's the thing that Instagram is helping with so much, is seeing that other people are like making real money doing this and they're getting paid for the time, you know, like there are people out there that value the time put into this. So I've kind of slowly raised it, and I got some really good art potter friends of mine on Instagram that are like, you need to raise them more than you're raising them, especially when they're selling out in like 5 minutes. So the last price raise that I had, which is this most elaborate, you know, some of my most elaborate mugs like this, they were $250 and they still sold like right away, which is like, if you talk to undergrad me or grad school me, I never in my life would have thought I'd been able to sell a mug for $250, but you can do it if you're doing like super. I mean, people are afraid of sculpture, right? Because it's like, well, who's gonna buy it? But like, there's ways around it, you know. Just trial and error, years of trial and error. And my favorite advice was, some of you might be familiar with Katie Marks. She's the one that really got everybody started doing crystal mugs and everything, because a lot of people have just copied that, unfortunately. But she told me, if you're selling out right away, you need to raise your prices at least $5 every time you have a shop update until it's not selling out right away. And that's that's your price range, is when they're taking more than a day to sell out, then you know you found the right price range. When they're selling out right away, like it needs to go up. And that's like really helped me not be quite afraid to raise my price to meet like a demand, you know. And I stopped selling at craft shows and things because it's just not my market. You know, if you want to do something more elaborate, craft shows, you kind of have to make things a little more, like, people want something that they can just like maybe spend $20 on and take home, you know. It's really hard to find a craft market where people want to, like, I'm not going to go to like the Tempe market thing and sell these for $250. It's just not the right market for it. But the internet has like really opened things up big time, because you're not limiting how many people see your stuff here. It's like worldwide, you know. And there are people out there that really like appreciate the work that goes into stuff like this, even though sometimes it can feel like they don't. They're out there, guys, I swear they are. So like, even if you're doing just like my simple, relatively simpler pinch pot mugs that I make, which I don't think I have any here, but I have pinch pot work here that I can show you what I mean. They're usually about $85, you know, because they still take a few hours to make. Like, I don't know, like, I know it's scary to charge more than $50 for a mug sometimes, but really, like, any mug I feel like should be no less than $40. Some people will say 50 or 60. So it's just a constant struggle, and it's easy for me to like give other people advice on that, but then like not take it myself. So I know the feeling, but I know that struggle of trying to sell work at a craft fair versus, you know, doing it online, and there's been a huge difference, let me tell you.
Would you say that you, I know you call them functional sculptures, do you try to make them with the mindset that people will use them, or, you know, until you make sure like the lip is drinker friendly and that type of thing?
I do try to make sure it's still comfortable to use. I don't always focus too much on it for some cases. Like, sometimes I'll have less space here for a hand, so it might just be like a little 2-finger mug, and not everybody might be into that. I'm probably a little bit form over function these days, but I still do want it. If people want to use it, I want them to be able to use it. So
right.
And people do, like, I mean, a lot of people are afraid to use them, but there are people that are like, this is my morning tea mug, and it's like makes my morning, makes my morning great, you know, and like they send me messages and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad people do use them because I do, you know, I do make them comfortable to use. But I just, yeah. But that's also kind of like why I have this little bump, like this little bump here is, you know, your finger can kind of rest there and helps you hold it a certain way. Like I usually hold it like this. But real quick, I'll take this paintbrush and kind of lift up the edge. Try to find the best way to hold this because I'm already smushing texture.
Yeah, so if you find yourself when you're working on another side of the mug and you've squashed down your texture on the other side, is that fairly easily repairable because they're so organic?
It is, but it's usually not a problem because when I'm not, you know, trying to show people what I'm doing, it's usually just up like this on a banding wheel. I'm working on it this way. So it's not always a problem, but there's always times where like, and I know you guys can relate, no matter how short you trim your nails, for some reason, you're going to jam your finger into your work and have a big fingernail print in it and like rage out for a minute. But yeah, that's another
every time.
Oh, it's crazy. So I had a big one. Where was it? You can kind of still see where I tried to fix it. The other day I had a big like gouge in this because I had just been spraying it down and rewrapping it for weeks because I haven't been ready to come back to it. Like I had to fix this little mushroom guy here and kind of reattach some clay and kind of like use my brush to fake it. And then there was a part up here that got smushed and I had to add some clay back in and go back in and kind of fake it, you know. So that's another reason I keep things as wet as I can get away with so that I can go back and fix stuff, you know. It's not like leather hard to the point where it's, you know, not still like flexible. But I'll come in here with a brush, making people dizzy. Hang on. Okay. For these leaves, I like to come in with this little brush and kind of come up under here. Boop, boop, boop. And you can kind of just like wiggle it. And I've done it here and here, and I've done it here, so you can kind of get this leaf like where it looks like it's starting to curl up off the pot. So it gets way more like variation. And then when it does get little cracks on it, this little brush will just like smooth them out. If I didn't have little paint brushes to smooth things out, I probably lose my mind. It makes your life so much easier. I'm gonna do it right. You can yell at me when I go off camera. It's really hard to like watch those things at the same time. Like, I can't see what you're doing.
You're doing a great job multitasking, so.
It's hard when you're not used to working this way for sure. Well, yeah, I'm gonna kind of come up in here and just like lift a little bit. I don't want it to stick out too much because I don't want it to stick out so much that somebody's gonna knock it and break it off, you know, but you want a little bit of in there. Sometimes too, I like to come in on those tips and like just curl them over. So that is one leaf, and I will do several more as it goes on. So I'll kind of like just keep adding here, and I'm gonna do another one that'll come around here. And then on this side, they'll start up here and kind of like branch out. And then down here, I'll just add another coil to give me this sort of deal.
And I think I noticed on your website, you purposely make the statement that you don't take special orders. Were you at one time, were you taking special orders and was like getting overwhelming?
There's just something
I can imagine.
I have done it very infrequently to begin with, but let me spray this because I'm gonna try to show you something else before it's late. Yeah, like the more time went on, I just realized how much that stresses me out and how much it makes me not enjoy what I'm doing anymore. It kind of makes it feel like a job in a super bad way. And then I also put all this pressure on myself for, well, what if they pay me to make this custom mug for them and they don't like it, like that. And then just like, as soon as something's like an obligation, my brain is like, nah, I don't want to do that. Even though this is my job, so it is an obligation. It just like it feels really limiting. Even if somebody was like, I don't care what it looks like, just make it for me and I'll pay. Like, I don't know, like you just got to recognize if that doesn't make you happy, you just got to get comfortable saying no to people,
Yeah.
which isn't always easy, but so far it's worked out pretty good. How do I want to wrap this up? Yeah, it's taken me a while to get really good at saying no. I think the last custom mug I did was for a friend who wanted one of these that had lilies on it. And at the end of the day, I was really happy with the mug. He was super thrilled with it. And I actually, ended up learning a thing or two from making it, about doing like petals and stuff. But overall, I'm just not happy, if I'm always taking custom orders or even pre-sales or something, it just adds this weird layer of stress that I just can't deal with. So, the whole reason of getting into clay full time is so I could be the boss of myself. So you just gotta like set your boundaries. If you don't enjoy doing it, you just gotta find a way to get by without needing to do it, some people still feel, like I have friends that will do pre-sales for stuff and they kind of just feel like financially like that helps them a great deal, and it probably would me too, but I mean, I don't know. I'd rather be doing exactly what I want and still feel kind of broke, I guess.
Right.
So if you ever see me doing pre-sales like on Instagram or something, you'll know like, oh, something went down and she needs money real bad. Let me try to move this over here because I'm totally free to stay on here as long as you guys want me to, but I do know what was it, like a couple hours, and it's already almost been 2 hours.
Yeah,
so.
it's about 20 minutes, but
Yeah, so I was just gonna show you guys how I hand build like the pinch pot forms and stuff really quick. Woo! Oh, okay. Let me switch my camera around.
yeah, Carol, I'll put Lori's website in the chat here in just a minute. And then just because I'm sure you didn't see it, Lori, Tristan, who's our social media person, she has mentioned that she usually doesn't take commissions either, just because a lot of times she has to change her system, which adds, but thank you, Gabrielle, which adds a lot of work. Just also.
It does. It changes a lot more than people realize for the process, whether it's like tangible changes or like just mental changes. It's just, I just can't, guys, just can't do it. Let's see. Oh, do I have any pinch pots here? Not good ones. I have old ones that were when I was still like really feel like I didn't know what I was doing. I have a flower pot here that is the same principle that will show you an after, when things are finished versus, so there's no flowers in this. I just keep like nature debris in it. But when I'm making something more like this, it's all hand built and it's all from big pinch pots that this has helped me hammer out. So as far as adding clay to it, everything I do is the same process you see me do with the leaf. It's just a matter of what am I sculpting, but I'm adding clay on the very same way that I did with the leaf.
Your incense burners that you had for recently,
yeah,
was that pinch pot as well?
Yes. And I have one here that I never sold because it has a crack on the inside. It's porcelain, and porcelain is the devil. So I kept it. But yeah, the pinch pot forms, and then I connect them to make bigger forms. So this is how I'll do a cone incense burner, and you can sit the cone in there and it burns and it comes out the holes in the top. So I have this like really organic sort of pod that kind of smokes, which is really cool. But I started. Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody did ask when you do your reloads and you do your previews, do you preview your prices right up front so people know how much?
Yeah, I do. And I do try to have a range of prices. I don't want like everything I make to be like, this is hundreds of dollars. So I'll have a variety of things sometimes, more so going forward too, as I'm sort of holding back all of the woodland bugs until I have a larger batch of them, and kind of working on them on the side until I probably won't list any more of those until Christmas. So the things like, pinch pot mugs or like some slab mugs that I want to get back to doing, everything might be from like 45 up. So I want people to know. I don't want anybody to have like a surprise. So on my website, I'll usually create like a preview page where I just have just the images of everything that's going to be up in a little slideshow that will look kind of just like the listings look, and I have the information under every single one. And I make that before I have a couple days before my update, and I just send the link to it to the people that are on my mailing list. So, which, it's a whole other subject, but a mailing list I feel like are really important because who knows how long Instagram is going to be like something you can adequately sell on. Like the internet changes every day and you don't have control over that, but you have control over your own website and you have control over your mailing list. And like, that's going to be like your core fan base anyway, the people that always want to know what's going on. So they get the preview. So anybody that wants to see the preview of what's going to be in the sale can get the link from the mailing list. Which, online sales have like completely changed my life, but it's so much work. It is every little bit of it. It's just like a whole week of editing photos and taking photos and listing and making listings and like all this stuff. So,
and do you do all your own packing and shipping then as well?
Yeah, 100% of everything. Liam would probably help me if I let him, but I'm super particular and I won't let him help me pack anything. But I let him write fragile on all the boxes for me. Yeah, I don't really have any interest in like having like assistants or people like making my mug blanks. I just want to do all the things myself. I don't know how I make things harder on myself, but I like being in total control of it all. But yeah, like this is the way to keep 100% of your money, right? If you're going to sell, but there is still a benefit to selling through galleries because then you can drop it off and leave. So you just got to like weigh your options. Like I don't really want anybody taking half of my mug because it takes so long to make that taking half of that 250 is just like it's just that kind of like too much for me personally. But yeah, I can't deny how much. Good.
I was just gonna say, how long did it take you really to start to build up like enough of a fan base to really where you could set like, I'm only selling mugs and I'll let you know when?
Yeah, it took a while. It's not something that really happens overnight. But I started posting stuff on Instagram in maybe 2016 consistently. I had an Instagram for my ceramics for a while and then I stopped using it because I didn't have a studio to work in when I first moved out here. So I didn't kind of pick it back up until maybe like late 2015 or 2016, I think. 2016, because that's when I started going for a while. I was going to Desert Dragon, which was where I was making work. So that's when I was like, okay, now I can post consistently because I'm going to consistently have something to post. So yeah, that's when I started doing that. And then if you're posting consistently with decent photos, like it's kind of snowballs a little bit. So 2017, 2018, I started selling pretty regularly. It wasn't like a sellout sort of situation. And then I was still working at Mac at the time, part-time. And then in 2018, October of 2018 is where I quit Mac and I was like, I just left in and was like, I think I can just do this. I'm going to do this full time. But things really started to pick up when I got about 10,000 followers on the Instagram.
Yeah, and you're up to, it looks like 65,000, a little over 65,000 now. That's not bad.
Which I mean, it's really good. And I know people think, oh, I have to have that many to like sell work, and you don't. I mean, it's really just a numbers game about, if this many people are looking at your work, maybe 2% buy. So if you want, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I know people that sell consistently and they might only have like 5,000 people looking at their Instagram, so
going back
having
to sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead. I'm going to change subjects. So
okay. Well, I was gonna say, like, there's a big number there on my follower account, but that doesn't mean that all of those people are looking every time. I mean, people make accounts and then they don't use Instagram anymore, or whatever. So like the actual engagement on my posts is probably who's really looking at it. So I might get like 1,000 likes on something, which is a lot. But when you look at the follow, people put like so much pressure on how many followers they have. And at the end of the day, like just want people that want to see your work. Those are the people you care about being there. And it doesn't have to be like thousands and thousands of people.
Right.
Liam's slowly trying to get into selling work full time too. He actually saved some money back so that he could just kind of quit. He was working at Chewy's, and it's warehouse work is not fun, especially in Phoenix. So he had money saved back, and he's just making work right now, and he's gonna have his first like big shop update soon. And even now he'll post stuff. I think what do you got, like maybe a couple thousand people following your account? Like less than 2,000, maybe 1,500 or something, 1,200, and he'll get people DM and like, hey, how can I buy this? So if you're like posting like things you really believe in, like you're gonna attract the people that really want to be there and really want to support you. So
Right.
that's the most important thing, is like be yourself. And if you're trying to like find your voice or whatever in clay, stop looking at other people's work. It's gonna throw a wrench in it, and you're gonna kind of end up following trends without even realizing it. So if you kind of just look at other stuff that interests you outside of clay, like you're gonna really develop like your own thing,
I think
if you build it, they will come.
I think that's a great point. About just, not comparing your work to anybody else's, you really have to just keep your own style. Kind of back on your technique and stuff. So I think you said that you fire your mugs primarily to cone 5, sometimes to cone 6, and that's based on what glaze or how you want your glaze to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, some people like that use the studio here, like one of the girls that fires here, sometimes her work really works best at cone 6. So if she has, if we need to do a cone 6 firing and it's only like, she only has enough to fill up like half the cone, I'll fire my stuff at 6, because I kind of am lenient with either one. They kind of I get good results with either firing. It'll change things a little bit. There's some glazes that I use that I like better at 6, and there's some I like better at 5, but I don't know.
Yeah,
As many things as I'm particular about. I'm like, whatever cone, I don't care, it's fine.
Yeah. What's the name of the studio you're at, Lori?
We kind of just refer to it as Village Pottery, but it's just like a little private studio. I mean, other people can work here, but Bethany Sheasley is my friend that owns the property, and kind of that's like if you need some studio space or you need to pay to get some work fired or whatever, she's who you would contact about that. So if anybody has questions about that, and you can always DM me and I can refer you to her if you don't remember the name Bethany Sheasley. But if you Google her or Instagram her, it should come up on Instagram for sure. But yeah, it's mostly just me. I'm here every day, literally, because I live here. And Liam's here every day, and we use it the most, and Bethany uses it. She's full-time graphic design artist, so her day job is that, but she's downstairs sometimes. And then our friend Alicia Allen, who you can see pieces of her work in, like she works at Made Art Boutique, and then she has some stuff in little shops around town, and she's mostly a full-time artist too, and she works here too. It's mostly the 4 of us, and some other people drop in and come and go, here and there.
What's Bethany's last name again?
Sheasley, Sheesley. Yeah, but we like other people coming and hanging out. So anybody that needs studio space, get right on it. Real quick, I will touch on making the forms for pretty much everything else I make, like incense burners, or I've even made a few big bases so far, and they always kind of like start out the same. So this is going to be a bowl. It's kind of a big process. And all I've done is hammered out one big large piece of clay to make the bottom, and then I've kind of pinched out a donut and pinched it out until I had this rim, and then you could still see my attachment line. I haven't like finished smoothing it out. So I attach it there, and then I'll put little feet on it, and I'll do the same carving for the rim, and I'll just add clay in the same way that I do on all my other work. And I'll just like hammer one of those out for you, because I like coil building, but I feel like if you just get in there and get it, you can make really big pieces really quickly, even quicker than like a coil built pot. I'll work small so that it's not so overwhelming. But and I just work everything I work on is right out of the bag. Clay, like super wet clay. I don't really. I'll still wedge balls of clay if I'm gonna throw them. Just I don't know, just habit. It's like one of those things that's not necessary, but I feel weird not doing it. Or I'll just like use the party backer board to one hand wedge this up a little bit because it probably does have a few bubbles in it. But
Lori, approximately
Yeah.
how many hours a day would you say you work on your product?
you know what? It's not as many hours as it looks, and I wish that it could be. Honestly, having kind of a bad case of ADHD makes it hard for me to work on anything for more than a few hours at a time at the most. So it's always this constant struggle where like you tell yourself, oh, you're full time, you should be working at least 8 hours a day. But that's kind of like just what society tells you, right? Like I can put in, and even other artists I talk to are like, I might work for like 5 hours at a time. So for me, it really is maybe I try to work for at least 5 hours a day. If I'm having a really good day, I might work for a solid 8 hours or more. Sometimes when I'm glazing, there's something about glazing where it's easier for me to sit and work for hours at a time. So I might do 8 or more hours if I'm in a glazing process. But when I'm just doing wet work like this, it doesn't matter how much I love something. I don't want to do anything for more than 5 or 6 hours usually. So I usually have what I want to get done that day, and I'll just try to start early and try to focus through the ADHD that constantly wants me to find something else shiny and new to do. So I would say the average is probably like 5 hours at a time. And I've recently started making myself take days off here and there. Like what I'm trying right now is work 3 days, try to get a lot of stuff done in that 3 days and take a day off, work 3 days, take a day off. And I have to make myself do that because there's always something to do. And I'm like, I'm behind and I need to do the things, but like you need that time. Like it's really important. So I'm like forcing and that's still only a 1 day off a week. So it's like, I don't know. So there are some days that I really have a hard time getting started and I might only get a couple hours in that day and feel like really crappy about it. But I try to be kind to myself, It's hard. It can vary. I think 5 hours is about the average. And I wish it was more like 8 or 9 hours, but I'm not that hardcore. But this guy, I hammer out all the bottoms of my pinch pot forms with this, or I'll hammer out 2 of these and put them together and make a sphere and I'll just build stuff from it. So most of the stuff that you see that I make is done either the way I did the woodland mugs. Everything else starts out this way. And it's just like super simple, like ceramics 1 skills that you just keep, tried and true. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you can really take it a long way. I think it's longer way than people realize. And this is where the banding wheel comes in handy. I usually have like a little sponge on it. And then I'll pinch just to make things even. Try to get you guys closer. Super basic. But I like forms that kind of like almost boat-like. And then I'll have like a little wall here. And you can either make it a mug or a bowl or. And then I'll kind of flip it and let it set just a little bit. And it just looks like nothing right now. It's just like maybe a 5-year-old did it, but that's just because you're not done yet. I'm also trying to rush through it so you can see what I do without having to watch me fuss with clay for like an hour. Because I will fuss with it for like an hour. And then for the top, I'll just take a ball of clay, shove my thumb through it, all the way through, make a donut. and then kind of even out the walls so you don't have one big thick side and one thin side. And then sometimes I'll take this and I'll sit it upside down and I'll kind of like use a pencil to like mark how wide I need the walls to be, like to match, because I'm going to pinch this out until it's this wide, and then that's going to be the walls around the side of it. So if you just draw right on your banding wheel, you know how far out to go. But normally I'm just taking this and I'm just pinching and pinching all the way around. I hope you guys are getting useful information. I never know, like, if it's like, I don't know. I never know if it's useful or not. So
I know you talk about doing like, 5 hours a day and taking that day off. Do you, I know we had, I think it's been a year now, we had somebody come in and do yoga for potters that just talked about the different stretches and stuff to try to keep from that kind of that repetitive, stress. Do you have stuff, stretches that you do?
I need to do that. For a while there, I was before times. I was going to a CrossFit gym, which I absolutely love because it's almost like obstacle courses for adults, sort of, and it's like high impact interval training. So like your workout might only be like 7 or 10 minutes, but it's intense. And I like weightlifting a lot more than aerobic exercise. So it kind of like, it was just like really right up my alley, more than I expected. I expected to go into the gym and be surrounded by a bunch of bros, but it was like a really great group of people, all ages, but then, COVID came along and that gym literally had to close like permanently. And I was really sad about it because I was like, I really liked going there. And especially, like, we all need that exercise, especially if you are an ADHD person. Like it helps your brain so much to be continuously getting a little bit of exercise every day. But you get stuck in the COVID jam with like not doing anything and not wanting to do anything. So I've kind of just been on the couch for a year now, and I can feel it, y'all. Like I feel it bad. But I'm like weaker now than I've ever been as far as strength goes. So getting right back into like a crazy gym routine is just like not smart. So yoga would definitely be something I should start with, because I did yoga in undergrad, and it's so relaxing, but you still build up strength and like stretching, and it was so helpful to your brain and your body. So I absolutely need to start doing that again.
On your glazing,
a little bit of human interaction at the gym.
On your glazing, I know your that low brown glaze sheen that you have on a lot of your pieces. What is that finish? Yeah,
this has dry clay all over it from me touching it, so but yeah, this is literally, I use it on anything I want to have a wood look to it that's not really shiny, and literally all it is red iron oxide that I've put a little water in and literally made a glaze out of nothing but red iron oxide and brushed it on. So I brush it on until it's kind of not really thick, because then it gets really weird. But I brush it on until you can't really like see through it anymore. And then I'll go back in with my finger and just rub in to get like some variation and to get it sort of all even. And I'll just go in with my finger and rub it. And then I'll just leave it, and I just fire it that way. And red iron oxide is kind of a flux, so it kind of fluxes itself out. It just kind of makes its own glaze, so to speak,
Neat.
One ingredient glaze. This is probably not going to be as wide as I want it, but I usually have it go this way so that I like a mug in a form that kind of like cradles your beverage or your soup or whatever. So I like to make things that kind of like come in. Cradle it like a little baby. And you just pinching and pinching and pinching.
I think this is great you're showing us pinch stuff, because this is a good reminder to folks that empty bowls can be pinch pots.
That's right. You don't
throw them on a wheel. You don't have to hand build them. You can sit and pinch pot a bowl out and easily make for Lori, just from your opinion, if you were making kind of a nice little soup soup bowl size out of a pinch pot, how much clay would you recommend for something that like that?
I usually don't weigh that out. I'll usually go by like what might fit in 2 hands for mine.
Okay.
And I have small hands. So like, I know it's like not really a good answer. I would probably say maybe a couple pounds at the most.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't use too much. It would end up being a much bigger bowl than you think. But I'll usually just whatever will fit in my hand this way. I just scoop it out of the bag and kind of like ball it up, and it's just like whatever fits in your hand, your ball of clay. That's what I'll hammer out for like a bowl.
Nice.
I'm not really good at making a bunch of things that are exactly the same size, so and that's okay. Embrace it. Unless you're a
Yeah.
production potter, you don't need everything to be like super measured with calipers and all that. It's just stressful.
Yeah, so Liam could, gain some new followers from here. Do you have his Instagram account name?
Yeah, the Instagram, which I messed up the other day. What's your Instagram? It's just, is it just Liam G Spiral? He's like, I think so. He doesn't know either. Yeah, it's Liam LIAMG Spiral.
Okay.
All together, no spaces or nothing like that. And just gonna brag on him that he's been doing some freaking awesome stuff. He's been like in that process where you're like really figuring out your work, and it's like, yeah, he's like figuring out some really like exciting things. I kind of measure this as I go out until it gets where it needs to go. So it kind of like fits, and then I can kind of make it fit, but I'll slip and score this both sides, and then I'll put it together. I do just have a handful of images to show you guys. So let me know when I need to like stop and do that. But
yeah, once
I
you
don't-
attach this, yeah, it'd be
do it
great to
too.
see a couple of your images. We're at time, but
Yeah.
for those of you that can stay on, I know Lori's got a few picture shoots or a few images she was going to show us, and if you have to drop off, we appreciate you joining us. I know it's I think for any of our artists that present, we would love just to spend all day watching them in work and asking questions as they come along. And so
I've really zipped through a lot of things. I feel like
you have
that makes it hard to like, oh, did that, was that helpful? Did you like get anything from it? Am I bouncing around too much?
Yeah, you've given us a ton of information, so absolutely. I know, already folks have been posting how helpful it is. I know it was helpful to me, and I mean, it is hard to narrow it down, and we want to see everything. Like we want to see all of the techniques and all of the glaze tips and
all the things.
And even like the sales and stuff, a lot of us are interested in that. We've even talked about that being a potential topic again about like recommendations and best practices on selling. So, but yeah, your work is
a whole process in and of itself,
beautiful.
right?
Yeah, it's so great to see.
As far as marketing and selling goes, I think I'm just really lucky that I've always had a love for photography, and I've always been really good about self-teaching how to really use a camera, the manual settings of a camera and understanding that. Not that you need a really good camera to do the photograph your work, because iPhones and phones are getting better and better, but it still makes a huge difference. But I've been doing that since I was in high school, so I've just had all of that practice on the side that's now comes in handy when I want to really photograph my work as well as possible. Like but I have seen people with really, not to downplay anybody, but like I have seen really remedial, not quite good enough to be selling, in my own opinion, work, but it was photographed so wonderfully that like they are successful, and it doesn't matter that that their work is kind of maybe not quite there yet. I mean, it just proves how important a beautiful photograph can sell work, but if you have really amazing piece, but your photo is like with terrible photo that people can't really see it, and maybe you've used flash and that just washed it out. Don't use flash with your photos, people. You know, it could be the most amazing piece in the world, and if the photo is horrible, like, it doesn't matter. So you really like learn to use a camera. Is like, if you're gonna get into selling online, learning how to use it. It doesn't even have to be a great camera. My camera is over a decade old. It was a really fortunate hand-me-down. It's just a Nikon DSL. It's like a Nikon D60. It's from like, it was a hand-me-down from an ex-boyfriend's friend of his mom's or something. And so it's like, it's a really old camera, but gets the job done, y'all. Photos are so important. It's the most important thing in selling online, I think. But a lot of people struggle with it. And I totally get that. Let's see. My clay is so wet that I just put it where I want it and it's fine. You know, like, the clay will move. You just put it where you want it. And if it starts cracking, it needs to be wetter. So I did like this really funky shape.
Nice.
And what I'll do is I'll usually just kind of mush that together all the way around. But then I'll take a coil of clay and I'll put a coil of clay all the way around the seam on the outside and the inside, just for like extra seam protection so nothing cracks. Which is what I did on the big bowl over here. So what I'll do is I'll make that seam nice, and then I'll come in and I'll refine the outside. And one thing that I have that I like to use a lot, and I think you can just get these at Marjan's, it's a little roller. One side has a little bit of a bevel on it, and the other side's flat. Sometimes all the pinch marks are great, and I like it when people leave their pinch marks on a piece, but if you want to smooth it out really quick, and you can just kind of go in with this, and it literally just makes it look really smooth. And probably smooth the look of that seam out really quick too, but you can just roll all over it with one of those, and it makes it look really, really nice. It kind of gets, if you don't want any kind of undulation, you can just make it really smooth. And then, because I like to be super extra with how I do everything, I've done that to this bowl. So I've rolled the rolly thing around most of it. So there's still a little bit of texture there. But I'm gonna let this get kind of leather hard, and I'm gonna go in with a mud tools form, and I just go around the outside of all of this and kind of make it just like really smooth, almost look like it was thrown. And then I'll start to add the rest of my stuff to it. So that's kind of how I do like a bowl or a pinch pot mug, and I'll pull handles and I'll put handles on. This, smaller ones than this to make mugs with. But when I'm doing something like, where did I put that incense burner I just had? I'm just, it's the same exact process. I just might be hammering out a much larger ball of clay that might be too big to pinch out with your fingers. But that's like why I hammer it with this guy, and I just have it in my hand and I just smack it and turn it and smack it and turn it. So I might have a really big ball of clay that I've made really big dome shape with, and then I'll set it aside and let it stiffen up a little bit. I'll make another one. I'll set it aside. I'll stiffen up a little bit. And I might put those two domes together to make a big ball. And then I might go in and carve out a hole for a spout and make it a base, or like, you can make it whatever you want with that, from just that basic form. So like literally everything that you see on my website is either done like the woodland mugs where I've thrown it, but like for the most part, like it's all just pinch pot, like basic pinch pot sort of technique. This guy here, because I want things to sort of stay in the same size range, because for a while there, they were getting like, I'd have one that was like huge and one that was like way too small. I just threw this dome out of bisque, and it's just kind of like a slump mold. Stop washing everything out. So I just threw this upside down on a wheel where you just make a donut and you throw and you kind of connect it in the middle. Looks really crappy on the inside, but I can just like hammer a ball of clay around this to get it. I've marked marks here, and then I'll trim so that I have the same size, and then I can put those two together and keep things consistent, because without a little help, I'm not consistent at all.
Perfect.
And then I made the dome part of one of these very plain without any texture on it, just the general shape that I want. And I actually got myself some plaster to mix up, which I hate doing, but I just made it really, it looks super, cruddy, but it works. It's just plaster. I've set half of that in there and let the plaster dry around it and pulled it out. And now I just take I've pinched out clay and I slump it in there, and I just do that twice. So I have two sides, and I put those two sides together, and then these end up all being the same size. I don't know that I was doing that. This is old, so I might not have done the same thing for this, but that's how I do them now.
Oh, okay.
To keep things the same size.
Great. Very good.
Let me shove some things in plastic. The reason that I had a few pictures that I had saved from online is people that do like really, I don't know their exact techniques unless I know the person, but I have a folder online of people that make very similar stuff to me, but they've really like, they do their own thing with the same techniques. Because I know sometimes you might watch how somebody does something, and it's hard to be like, well, how do I make that my own? You know, like, so I think seeing some images of people that do the same thing, but not at all, like can show you what you can do with this. So I think I should be allowed to share some photos with you.
Yeah, and again, for those folks, if people are having to drop off, I know we're over time, but we'll look at our images. But thanks again for everybody who's been attending. And if you had any questions, you know, Lori's in our newsletter and on our social media, you can find the links to Lori's website and her Instagram site. So I know she welcomes questions. She has a great mailing list to sign up for.
Totally message me.
Yeah.
All right. So here is somebody that I think actually goes to the same school I went to grad school at. And I almost have like that mushroom thing that I do with my mushrooms, but it's like this whole side of that mug. Like, so it's like, I don't know if they've referenced my work in that at all. I know that we follow one another, but regardless, it looks nothing like mine, but you could see the similarity there. And I think that what they did was like a really cool mark on it. But it looks like a giant blown up version of my mushrooms. And I was like, oh, that looks really cool. And the glaze is really pretty. Let's see.
Yeah, that's really pretty glaze.
Looks like I have to go back and forth between myself and these. This person has, and I hope they're not sideways for you guys.
No, the other one came in without being sideways.
I don't know why this one's sideways. Technical difficulties, you guys, I'm sorry. But see how they have like a layer within a layer, you know, they kind of have that layered look like I do, but they look like they carved their work.
Yeah, this one's not showing. This is still showing you.
No. Oh no. Oh, I had to click done. That's why. There we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like it's, you know, similar vibe to my stuff, but it's definitely not like my stuff. And it looks more like they carve it, but that layered look is still there, you know. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think probably one of the most interesting things that I learned today from yours is, again, tiny little coil can make it look like you've added a ton of stuff, a ton of clay.
Yeah, so. And I have no idea if that's how any of these people are doing their work, but like it's the same principle.
Wow, yeah.
Those are really cool little tea balls or whatever. Let's see. This person does really elaborate stuff, kind of like I do, but on these big bases, and it's like stunning work, you know. And then I've got little mushrooms and stuff on there too.
Wow.
But yeah, right. Yeah, Gap Tooth Studios. Their Instagram name I made sure was, when I cropped these, that you could see their Instagram handle. If you want to check out their stuff. See, similar but very, very much their own. This one is very layered look, but very different. But you can see they've kind of done a similar thing where they just have layers of fun texture and color and like really, really cool stuff. Just a couple more. This one was the same as the one with the gradiated colors that I showed you guys a second ago, but the coffee pour over, little coffee beans on it, but it's like got that same layer. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool.
that's another thing about Instagram. It's like I've met so many people that I'm now really good friends with through there that I never would have known otherwise, you know, like seeing so many other people's work. Also, just to show you guys things that have inspired me that you wouldn't know right off just from looking at my stuff. Let's see. One person that I have loved for a very long time is Gwendolyn. I don't know if her last name is Yapolo or Yapolo. I don't know how she pronounces it. But that form where it bellies out and goes in and bellies out again, like I definitely know that I got that from looking at her work, and that's why I do that in mine. So she has these amazing matte crystalline glazes she formulates herself, but her shape of her mugs are always like that. And the way that they dip on the top rim, like that's definitely why I do mine that way too. But you know, obviously our work is still very different. But it's a good to see how people can get inspired by something and it's still like not look anything like theirs. But when you see them together, you're like, oh, I get it now. You know, I get where you were inspired from that. And then a really good friend of mine, Buddy Dobbins, makes stuff that sometimes has these little scallops that come in. And I know that that's definitely where my handles that do that same thing, like the one I was just working on with all the little like frills that are growing out from the handles. I know that that's just stuck in my brain from seeing Buddy do it for years and years, and it just came out in my handles. So got a shout out to Buddy there. Buddy Dobbins.
Nice. I think that's gorgeous. And I mean, thank you so much for the demo. It's absolutely beautiful. And just to see your work, and I think I could spend all day just kind of watching you create your little coils and changing them into something that looks like it never started with a coil.
I know, and or like a pinch pot or something too. And there is a couple videos that I put on YouTube that might show you a little bit better if you want to go back and see. I know it's hard to maneuver for Zoom for this as I'm working, but I made a couple videos maybe a year or so ago that are on YouTube that if you go to my Instagram and click videos on the highlights, you can kind of see. But even if you just go to YouTube and you Google, or not Google, on YouTube, that's like the word for search now is Google. If you go on, if you go on YouTube and just search Lori Phillips ceramics, like it'll come up. And I only have like 2 videos on there so far, but it's like fairly in depth of this is how I work. So
okay, we'll try to find those links and add them to our page. And just to remind everybody, you know, this Lori's demo was recorded, so it's available to members to access via our site. And if you have friends who want to see it, you know, send them to Arizona Clay membership page, and it's $35 for the year. So, and you get access not to just the live presentations, but also the recordings, so you can see what you might have missed over the years. So. Yeah.
I need to join. Why am I not? I didn't even know about it until super recently. Put this back up here. Oh no! There we go. Yeah, but if anybody has more questions, like let me know.
You're sideways.
Oh no! I'm not sideways to me.
That's perfect.
Come on. There we go.
Do we have any other questions? I know we've got a ton of just thank yous and such a great presentation.
Thank you
for
hanging out
from everybody. So yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we hope you have a quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just have a quick comment. I think, you know, everything was great. Definitely shared so much. You're very generous with your time and your information. I do particularly appreciate your, you know, discussion about looking at other work and, you know, direct and indirect influences. And it does kind of happen naturally that some small things of others' work kind of creep into your own, and it's not necessarily bad, but it's a matter of how you use it.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, just like recognizing and respecting that with the other artist, and and just being attentive to, for the benefit of other artists and yourself as a creative person, to take the time to really find your own style and voice with your work. And I agree, like not focusing too much on studying other people's work, but looking at other resources that you're interested in that can include anything from science to nature. And that's all of that is such helpful information. Thank you.
Even other art mediums, like I love looking at like a lot of metalsmith jewelry and stuff because the textures and stuff. And I've done a lot of metalsmithing. I almost double majored, but it's been a long time since I've been able to do that. But like other mediums too can influence your work without you being like, oh, look, I've just copied this other person. You can kind of retranslate that other medium, and it's going to force you to like rethink
Definitely.
it. You know, it's just
hang out with other artists.
Yeah, Instagram's been amazing, but it's also created like this echo chamber where people are just like, there's trends now that are like that everybody just wants to make this one thing, you know, and that's what's popular, so I'm going to make that. And it's like, maybe you should step off the internet for a while. And people have a hard time trusting themselves too, I think. They're comparing themselves to this and that instead of just like thinking about what really, really, really inspires them, like really deep down, you know, and just trusting that you can go with that. Like, I'm not good at offhand, I don't have the quote in front of me, but there's a quote that I post every once in a while that's from a painter that's like, you have a voice and other people need to hear it. Like there are other people, there's billions of people on the planet. There's other people out there that are going to be into the same thing that you are. You have to trust that, you know, that it's not just you. Whatever weird thing you want to make, somebody out there is going to be into it.
Right.
Yeah, I sort of super paraphrased, awful way of putting his quote, but yeah,
that's great. Well, thank you so very much. Again, we really just can't express our appreciation that you took time on your Saturday. So to spend it with us, thank you. And to everybody who joined us, thank you so much. And like I said, we've got one more Zoom presentation, and then our next one is in person. And Lori, I hope that you can, you know, make it down, maybe come see everybody in person in August. Yeah. So check us out. And if you have questions, concerns, suggestions, ideas, please don't hesitate to email us. We check the Arizona Clay email regularly. I'm pretty sure that our email, including my email, is online via the newsletter. So you can reach out to us if you have questions about empty bowls. And I just have to stress, please make empty bowls. We have free clay. You don't even have to pay for the clay to make empty bowls. We have clay that's available. If you can't come to one of our sites, check in with us, because we may be able to meet you somewhere just based upon, you know, where we are. And again, we can fire, we can glaze. So don't let any of that stop you from making bowls just because you don't have a kiln at home. So and with that, thank you again, Lori, and we will see you all in I guess a month. So
yeah,
thank you. All right,
Thank you,
bye.
Lori. Lots of great information.
Yeah, message me with any questions. If you just Google Lori Phillips ceramics, I come up everywhere. So it's just Lori, no U's or E's or anything. Just Lori Phillips, it'll come up.
Yeah, and Lori's newsletter that you can sign up to on her website is super great, or not newsletter, I guess your mailing list, I should say. So when she has shop updates and you can see her work and stuff. So I recommend that. Of course, her Instagram site is gorgeous. So
it's usually just like maybe one email a month when I'm having an update, or every 6 weeks. So you're not going to get like tons of mail from me or anything like obnoxious, I promise.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.